to Marketing Careers Uncovered, and I'm Dave Hayward. Sometimes we just need a cold, hard dose of reality to drag us out of the doldrums, and my guest today is on the ticket to do just that. Lewis Kemp finds himself in the hot seat. Aside from running his own agency and some other projects which we'll find out a little bit more about, he's pretty well known for dishing out some pure, unfiltered reality, and the stuff we need to hear, not what we want to hear. So before we find a little bit more about how you've got where you are and what you've learned along the way, Lewis, could you give us a little bit of background on you and what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. Main business. I'm the founder of Lightbulb Media. So that's a performance creative agency. We've been going for about 6.5 years now. And I'm also the co-founder of the University of Creative Idiots, which is an online community helping marketers to get better at their jobs without having to shell out lots of money to gurus who will tell them absolute nonsense.
Excellent. So in terms of the day job, agency side, what type of clients do you typically work with, and what kind of work do you do on a daily basis?
So we're probably split. We always say we're not sector specific, we're more attitude specific, but how it's fallen, we've got around 70% of the clients are e-commerce based businesses. So kind of 6-figure brands that want to reach 7-figure brands that want to hit 8. And then on the B2B lead gen side, we've got a mad mix across that, from all things from kind of like home improvements and construction. But it's basically ultimately people that don't want to come in and just sound like a B-Tech version of someone else that's another HR or accountant or insurance provider. So if they're willing to take some risks and push the envelope a little bit, then it sounds like it's someone that's going to be up our street. So yeah, we look for people that are open to being creative and trying new things, because that's how you win these days. If you can't get attention, then you're anonymous.
Very good. So on the e-com side, you've lived through Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all that madness, and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, it's always an interesting time. So many fluctuations. It's pretty mad. But yeah, this year was pretty solid. I mean, everyone's been saying it's going to be a weird year this year since 2020, but I think everyone's just come down to terms with it now. If we don't have at least one pending natural disaster in the year, it's probably not been a normal year.
In terms of why marketing, why did you get into this space? What was the appeal to you? Is it something you always wanted to do?
I think like most marketers, mate, I got into it because I was shit at sales, and sales was kind of the first foray into it, which I'm very glad I did. I think it should be, people should be conscripted into doing sales, because there's nothing that builds your resilience quite like being told to F off 99 times a day in the pissing down rain at 7 o'clock around Salford. And you do need that resilience in later life, because, the world's not a nice place and people aren't nice. I fell into it because it's a way of making people do things without having to deal with rejection. So very self-centered way of getting into it. And I also found out I was quite good at it as well, so I thought, let's stick with this, it makes money.
And it never hurt a marketer to understand sales anyway, in the grand scheme of things. They are two sides of the same coin, really, aren't they?
Yeah, ultimately. You've got to work together, and everyone likes to pass the blame, but our job is to make the sales team's lives easier. And it's that fine balance, obviously, isn't it? Because everyone wants to take the credit, but nobody wants to take the hit if it's not going right. It's a fine balance, but I tend to think if we can take them to 80-90% before we put them in front of somebody to call, then it should be pretty much done deal.
Very good. So let's talk about your first role, where you really cut your teeth. So PCSA International, wasn't it? What kind of stuff did you find yourself doing there? Was it what you expected as your first foray into the workplace?
Yeah, because it was on the gap years actually. So I was just kind of like needing a job, and then saw a job that was like 24 grand, and I thought, great, for someone who knows sweet FA. I thought, yeah, I'll take that. Marketing sounds pretty easy, and it was basically email. We're doing email marketing, giving away free tickets, sometimes paid if you could get them, but basically free tickets to public sector events through telemarketing and email marketing ultimately. And it's as shit as it sounds. Public sector events, that's why they were giving away free tickets. So really, if you can't give away free tickets, you're probably not a good marketer. So yeah, it was a good way of figuring out, again, it's just dealing with those rejections on the phone, learning scripts, learning how to overcome objections and things like that. And so I think it's definitely a good place to be in, just to, the first experience of that office vibe as well, and understanding office politics and things like that.
Yeah, and especially on the office politics side, I've lost count of how many businesses I've seen or come across that profess not to have any office politics, but actually every office has office politics. It's how you figure out how shit gets done and who you need to influence, and it's not necessarily who you report into all the time, is it?
No, it's a game. No matter how many people say, we're a family and there's no hierarchy here and things like that. There are people that can get shit done. There are people that are doers. There are people that are thinkers, and there are people that are lazy bastards. And you'll find that in every single business. Is it the Pareto's law that 20% of people do 80% of the work? Tends to be true across all aspects of life.
So you moved on there after your sort of as a gap year role. I guess your first role after uni was launching a new nutrition brand. Can you tell us a little bit about that one? Because that sounds really interesting.
Yes, that was a bit of a weird one. It was offered the job from a friend of mine's brother-in-law, and he said, I've got a relationship with this American fitness celebrity, and he's super big on the infomercials, and he wants to launch a nutrition range in the UK because he doesn't have one in the UK and got the licensing for it and things like that. So it was basically, he was going to fly over. We are going to do 3 sellout launch events for all these, crazy posh venues. But me being kind of naive, this is one of the first business lessons, like nothing was contracted or anything like that. So I was just helping out. And I was like, oh, obviously, why don't you just pay me after I've done this first 3 months and we've sold out the events and the money comes in? And then you can pay me then. So obviously I sold out all the events. And then said, yeah, can I get paid for that now? And basically the answer was no. And I think threw me like 500 quid or something like that. So that was first lesson. 1, don't work with friends and family. 2, contract to everything. And 3, don't be a nice person because people aren't nice.
Yeah. Keep things professional. So I guess you don't do any arrangements like that with clients anymore.
No, if I had a deal with my mum, she would be signing a contract. Money changes everyone when it's put in front of them. I don't care what you say. So yeah, for me, everything now is signed, sealed, delivered, and the personal is put next to the professional. You're a client first and foremost, and you can be a friend next. But yeah, that relies on you being a good client.
So at this stage in the game, you were fresh off the uni boat. I guess, how much did you know about the nutrition market, how to launch new brands, what it took? Where did you start, and how did you approach pulling together all the bits needed to ultimately be successful? Did you feel out of your depth or too stretched at any point, or did it all go swimmingly?
No, I think in terms of the market, I was a user of the product, i.e. like protein shakes. I was going to the gym quite a lot of the time. But in terms of marketing in particular, as in the nuts and bolts of it, I didn't really know what the services were called. But I kind of had a good idea of how to influence people. I've always had like an interest in psychology and sociology, which is what I studied at uni as well. So understanding why people do the things they do, how you can influence people to make decisions, what pain points are and how to press on them. So that was a kind of lead in, but ultimately, no, it was a case of, can you do paid ads? And I said yes. And then I went away and then I opened YouTube and books and what is paid ads, figured out the systems, but the systems are the systems. It's actually the fundamental strategy that plops into the systems that doesn't really change. Humans haven't really evolved that much over the last couple of 100 years. And it's quite easy to influence people if you have a deep knowledge of their pain points.
And understanding the product or business that you're supporting and selling as well. You can't just operate at one end of the spectrum spewing out ads and creative without understanding the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I was kind of more of just a worker bee back then, whereas obviously having an agency now, and it's kind of changed over the years now because, with stuff moving more into AI and automation, pressing the buttons doesn't really matter as much. You could get, a blind monkey to do that. But it's actually the wider piece now. We act more as wider business advisors. So it's not just a case of, oh, your ads did this. Great. ROAS will tell you how your ads performed over a 7-day click. Tells you very little about the real business impact and what the key metrics you should be measuring, whether you're acquiring new customers, whether it's profitable on the first order, when you become profitable. So now we kind of come in and yes, they will hire us for a service like paid ads, but we will also oversee, retention and acquisition and make sure the margins are nailed down and look at that wider piece to make sure that they're actually scaling.
And on launching brands, brand launches are quite interesting things anyway, because there's often two things which come into the mix. One is about getting lots and lots of attention for said brand, but then also the piece of taking that attention and turning that into revenue and pounds and pence in the bank. In this context, how did you turn that attention into revenue ultimately?
It's understanding and tracking the different stages of that funnel. And if you take meta ads, for example, you can very clearly see how many people add to cart versus how many people get to checkout versus how many people purchase. if there's a big fat gaping hole in each one of those stages, you need to be looking at the UX there and going, what are we doing that's scaring people off here? Do we have enough social proof? Are we asking for people's maiden name and star sign instead of just letting them pay? There's always a place that can be fixed along the journey. And I think the problem is when people think that all reach is good reach. And if you pour lemonade in at the top, you can't expect champagne out at the bottom. And it's much better to actually go for that kind of niche market by focusing purely on their pain points and speaking directly to them, rather than going, we sell everything to everyone and we're all things to all people. Because if you think that, then you don't know your target market at all.
So you've given me the perfect segue here, because what I really wanted to talk to you about today is, it's something you've been quite vocal about out there. You only have to Google you for 5 minutes to pick out some of this stuff. But meaningless metrics is one of those areas I wanted to touch on. So most of us have seen or dealt with KPI soup, so key performance indicator soup at some point. So dashboards chock full of vanity metrics. I'd be really interested to hear from you in terms of, we've talked about a couple of them, but what are some other examples of vanity metrics that you've seen out there in your work?
I think depending on what you're doing, like organically, people just chase impressions all the time or reach and things like that without actually having any knowledge of it. And then from the paid side, I understand there is weight in looking at, cost per click or the click-through rate or the thumb stop ratio. But ultimately, like you say, that is something that tells you how well the ad performs in getting them to the site. I've seen things that have got desperately low cost per clicks and a terrible conversion rate, and then a cost per click that's 3 times higher that converts 10 times better. And if you were basing that off cost per click, let's turn it off because it's too high, you would never have got those conversions. So it's actually what matters most is money in the bank. That's the one thing you can trust. Where it came from, that's the bit where it's all grey and everything's going to try and claim it. Ultimately, it's on you to set incrementality experiments to go, if everything else remains the same and we switch this up by 20%, what falls out at the bottom? Okay, we got more money. Let's pump more money into this. Can we switch this off now? Okay, no, it went down. Okay, switch this back on. And it's that fine balancing act, whereas we were so blessed with like universal analytics and Google Analytics, where people who didn't really understand data were blessed with so much of it and could make it say anything they wanted. And now when you ask them to do a wider piece and to understand how a purchase actually works, I always say, what was the last thing you bought? How did it come about? Where did you first hear about them? How long did it take you to buy? What was the piece of content that made you do it? Who else were you considering? It's never a see, add, click, buy. Everything you've ever bought has been the product of branding and marketing at some level, whether you choose to accept it or not. So it's trying to educate people on that and say, look, these platforms, they're not enemies to be measured in silos. They're friends, and you need to figure out how they all work together to get the best result.
Do you think all these attribution models, then, where, again, you can tweak them to say whatever you want, do you think they're ultimately futile exercises and just take you away from focusing on that? Am I driving revenue? Is it going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think anything in platform should be used as a signal, not as a source of truth. The only thing that matters is that money in the bank. And I would say for most businesses, there are only 5 to 8 metrics you should be measuring. And the vast majority of those are around how much did it cost to acquire this new customer? How much did that new customer spend? Were they profitable? What's the lifetime value of them? And how much are we spending in terms of our revenue as a marketing efficiency ratio? Like if you are getting those in profitable, it does not matter what your ROAS is because your business is growing. I can get you a 3x in platform and grow your business, and I can get you a 10x and you can be treading water but thinking you're doing well. And I think that's what people have fallen into now with the wild promises of I can get you 10x. Yeah, so can I. I'll just target all your existing customers. It's very, very easy. People don't want to have the difficult conversations to go, you need to sacrifice the in-platform ROAS to make better gains over here.
So going back to your whole career trajectory, you never went into a what we'd call an in-house role. You went agency side and then ultimately started your own. What was there anything particularly drawing you to agency world, or was it just a happy accident?
In-house would bore me, honestly. As much as I complain now about how many things I have to do and there's always something on fire, I would much rather have that than have to come in all day and just sell the same fucking tin of grey paint. Like that would just send me into a deep well of depression. So, if I can be working on insurance in the morning and sex toys in the afternoon, then, that keeps a little bit of spice going. And I think for a creative in particular, If you are sat in that same doldrum, looking at the same desk, speaking to the same person about the same product, it's very easy for your creativity to disappear. Whereas what we can do now is take the best bits that have worked in client A and try them across client B, and this worked over here, and this theory and this setup worked over here. We get a wide view across all levels of the economy, across all countries, about what's working and what isn't. So I think our clients benefit from that, but it also is really good to kind of keep your finger on the pulse because it changes so much, as you know, like with AI and platforms and new updates and Google updates and things like that. So you've got to be in the trenches, haven't you, as much as you can.
You've painted a wonderfully romantic, rosy picture of insurance and sex toys. Is a pairing that'll stay in my mind for quite a while. What can be a bit shit about agency world? Is it for everyone?
No, I don't think so. I think it's, for me, the root of all my problems in life are other people. Whenever we get someone who comes in and goes, here's the cash, here's what we want to achieve, here's what we need to achieve it by, and it's realistic, and then they just move out of the way, they get the best results. But you tend to spend 20% of your time firefighting, 60% of the time explaining what you're going to do, and 20% of the time actually doing what you've been paid to do. So ultimately, it's kind of that education process of letting people do the job they paid you for, which sounds insane, but until you start working with people who are like, I like this because it's blue, and we're like, here are 20,000 data points to show you why it should be green, and they go, let's go with blue. People are insane. And the ego, like a founder's ego or a market manager's ego, is the biggest blocker sometimes. In just, you need to know when to step out of the way. Our job is to make you look amazing and make you money. I don't care about any of the credit. Like, we have all these data points. We've run tens of thousands of ads. We have all this data to show you and tell you what your customers want. It's your prerogative. If you don't want to take it, that's fine. But then we can't help you because that's a hobby, and we help businesses. So it's always the people element, I think. And then managing people as well is obviously difficult because you're spinning plates and someone's dog's got toothache and someone's having a bad hair day or something like that. So yeah, the people element is not fun, but the work element is amazing.
So you've got to be quite resilient there, and haven't you really? How do you keep that up? Because I'm sure there's days where you just want to go and lie under the desk and sleep for 12 hours, but you've got to pick yourself up and keep going and delivering. How do you manage that aspect?
To be honest, mate, I think with great difficulty is the honest answer. But ultimately, no one's coming to save you. And I think I spent too long trying to bend over backwards in the first couple of years because, like you say, you're undercharging, you're over delivering, you're kind of desperate for work, so you're taking on whoever you can get. And because you're undercharging, you attract the clients that want the world on a stick for 300 quid a month. And that naturally starts to peck away. So the second we started just being more strict with the people we work with, and not just in, can you actually afford this? Because we will always be honest, before a penny is exchanged, this probably isn't right for you. You don't have the budget, you don't have the runway yet, you don't have the data yet, you don't have a solid conversion rate, your margins are off, whatever it may be. But also the attitude. I don't care if you come in and say, I want to spend 500 grand a month, if it's followed by, but you need to do this, 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 and this, that we've been trying for a year that hasn't been working, because that's the definition of insanity. So we can't help people like that either. So I think it's being very, very clear about who you qualify, who you disqualify, because if you do not like the people you work with, for me, that resentment breeds, and you'll just stop giving a shit about each other and the work. So I would always try and work with people that I genuinely would go for a beer with, which I know is probably not a scientific thing, but it works for me.
No, but yeah, people don't trust the gut instinct enough, and you get a pretty good read straight away of whether someone's going to be a rampant arsehole or not. But we let other things blind us or try and kid ourselves that, well, it'll be all right. Usually your gut's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's never been wrong. And I've been that person that doesn't listen to it. I've had those red flags, and then lo and behold, everyone hates working with this person. They're an absolute nightmare. And then it's a case of, right, we need to it's that you convince yourself because it's a high paying client that it's worth it. And then you look at all the stress and the time spent firefighting and explaining and following up and having a daily call about their £10 a day spend and why was conversion rate down between 1 and 105. And it's like, actually that time makes them by far your worst paying client. And they're also damaging the team's morale as well. And it's being brave enough to go, let's fuck this person off, knowing that there's another 2, 3, 4 coming in around the corner, and there always has been. So I think just having faith in your own pipeline and always leave that space for someone who's a dream client. If there's anyone that's not an absolute, yes, I love working with this person, then it's probably a no, and that's fine. It might be perfect for somebody else. but you've got to stick to your guns. You can't take everyone on.
Yeah, as hard as it is to leave money on the table there, it's you drive yourself absolutely potty otherwise. And I recall my brief stint working agency side, and actually found that it was more often than not the smaller, lower paying clients that were probably the worst to deal with. Probably because the small budgets they were putting in were actually quite a high proportion of their overall budget and revenue, so it really mattered more. So they were really in the weeds and on the detail, but it still never quite worked out.
I think there's nothing more dangerous than a little bit of knowledge, and then when people come in and do that, I kind of get it to a point, but then at some point you are being your own bottleneck, and I think we always try and set the systems. When people come in and say, "Oh, I saw the results you got for X, Y, Z," yeah, we do get those results now, and they are spending 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 a month on ads, but it took them 18 months to get there, and this is what we did, and we had full creative control, and they listened to all our CRO recommendations, and we made the creative for them. And then they go, "We don't want to do any of that." I go, "So you won't get the same results as them. Like, unless you follow the same path, you will not get the same results." And I think that's the difficult point for people to accept where they are, the realities of where they are.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine if you were a plumber and you came around my house and actually you need to put some new pipes here. You've got a blockage here and there, and I went, "Actually, can you not just drill a hole there and stick a hose pipe? Won't that work?" I wouldn't do that at all.
Perfect, honestly, and I always say, like, that queue for comforting lies is always longer than the one for difficult truths. And it's a great irony because they say, "Well, we don't have the budget to hire you," and then they will go out and they will churn through 6 shit agencies or freelancers that were charging 300 quid a month, wreck their entire bottom line, and then come back, and then obviously we have to charge like double now to, 1, fix it, and then 2, do it properly. So it's like, you told me you didn't have budget before, but if you added all that budget up that you've just wasted on all these people that didn't know what they were doing, we would have absolutely been fine. So that's the great irony of marketing, but we are probably the only industry that everyone thinks they could do if they had time, which is quite beautiful.
So do you think marketing more broadly has got a bit of a culture problem here? Because I see this so often, hang around LinkedIn or Reddit or wherever, and everyone's peddling growth hacks and shortcuts. Everyone seems to be on the other end looking for quick fixes to problems.
It's if you're going for the mass market does not want to hear, "Put your fucking head down, undercharge, over-deliver, stay consistent for 24 months, don't look up." You're not going to sell many books or courses if you say that. People want to hear, "Take it easy, have 7 steps. What about these AI tools? Let's make 100 posts in 3 seconds." It's the nature, that Amazon generation. One thing I would say is the people that are looking for quick fixes, I've never seen a single person make anything of themselves. The only person that wins in that game is the people selling the quick fixes. And that's the irony in it. Like, there is no product that they're selling you. You are the product. You believing that there is a product is the product. And then, when they realize that they've pissed away their money, they then start selling that hope to the next person. And then this is how they just keep spawning out of everywhere. Everyone's selling the idea, but nobody's actually executed it, pulled the data back in and gone, "This is it in action in real life," beyond their own coaching coaches to coach coaches pyramid. You don't see that revenue-based data. Everything is based on an idea, a hope, a wing, and a prayer. And if it doesn't go right, "Oh, you mustn't have applied it right because here are 3 fake testimonials from my uncle and my mate and my other fellow podshagger."
How do you sniff that stuff out and differentiate the bullshitters from people who can actually help and deliver here?
Data. For me, everything's rooted in that. And I often get blocked because when I see wild promises about my client A made XYZ, or I had an XYZ month, can I see the data for that? Have you got any revenue-based data? Well, they got 6,000 impressions. Can I see the revenue-based data for how well this does? People will very, very quickly block you or get rid of you when you start to ask to see revenue-based data. And an easy thing, if you're in the UK, is company's fucking house. If you claim you're a 7-figure entrepreneur and you don't have a registered business or you're not VAT registered, they're probably not a 7-figure coach. Like, this is just logic, but people are so blinded by needing that quick fix because hope and desperation, they're 2 very powerful emotions. And this is what they prey on. You want that attention. Everyone else is getting that attention and you're not getting it. You need some dopamine. I'm the gatekeeper of this dopamine. I can get you these wild views that are going to change your life. And it's a sales pitch for someone who's not emotionally mature enough to understand the wider picture. I can understand why people fall for it. So it's kind of it's a difficult one because I think it's kind of like half natural selection. I do think you need to be burned before you actually learn that lesson. So I'm kind of like, okay, if you fell for that, you kind of deserve it. If you fall for it twice, you're a fucking idiot.
Very much so. Yeah, that's really helpful on companies' house. Does the business even exist? Have they, if for a certain size, they must have had to have filed something. So it doesn't take too long, really, does it, to scratch below the surface and uncover the steaming turd pile. Another thing that's swirling around at the moment is it feels like everyone has to have a personal brand or be a thought leader, be it up at 4 a.m, running ultra marathons and having 3 side hustles all together to be successful. Is there something in that, or is it all bollocks?
I think it's been made to be bollocks because it's been put in a box and branded and labelled and commoditized now. Whereas before, if you looked at, look at a Steve Jobs or a Whitney Wolf Herd, it was a personal brand. It was a business that had a person, and the person was bigger than the business, and that's what attracted people in. The second it gets labelled onto something now, and then you start attaching daft metrics to it, like if you actually look at a personal brander's comment section, you can always tell the quality of someone's work by looking at the quality of their comments. Anyone, like if I decided to go and put a mankini on now and splay myself on the sofa, I would get some lovely posts from halfway around the world. This is great insights. Please can I marry you? It's not hard to get reach and comments for the sake of it, but it's the real business. Like,
I think I get some very different comments if I popped a mankini on.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a website for all of us. I've learned that from being in marketing. There's a niche website somewhere. But I always say the problem with most personal branders, right? The most skilled copywriters are chameleons, right? And if you are, whatever it is, young, hip, about town person doing that, and then you get asked to write for a CFO of, a banking firm in London, that if you can only write in one style, guess what? You can't offer personal branding as a service. Fair play, you might have a good personal brand for yourself, but you can't just plop that onto everyone else and assume that it's going to work, because it's a different person, it's a different audience, it's a different tone of voice. And when it comes down to that, people struggle. That's why I could scroll LinkedIn now and tell you exactly which personal brander wrote each post, because people have these distinctive styles, and having a style is good, but it shouldn't be so distinctive that I can spot your work out from everybody else that's doing it, because it should be their work. So I think it's very easy to spot. I think it was, again, very low barrier to entry. Anyone can say it. What do you do? Oh, I'm a personal brander. Okay, what does that mean? I just get people to post pictures of themselves and talk about burnout. Okay, cool. Made any money? No. But they got loads of views. Okay, well, when do they make money? The views will turn to money soon. Have you got any content funnels in place? Are you tracking anything? Pixels, retargeting? What are you doing with lead magnet? No, just impressions. Cool. So that's a very short burn business. I call them shooting stars. They come, they burn bright, they promise the world, and 6 months later, they're doing Forex or crypto or coaching. You see it all the time.
Yeah, and we're kind of full circle back to the world of vanity metrics as well. I mean, I've seen people who have taken advice from LinkedIn experts and stuff and write these bizarre posts that don't sound anything like them at all. It takes them 3 times as long to write because they're really trying to force themselves into inhabiting this completely different body and persona. And you go, I know you. That's not you. You're trying to be something. You're trying to be something that you're not, and it always just smells a little bit off, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's it. If you don't have that consistency, and then someone meets you, and then you go, "Oh my god, you're so funny, Dave," and then I meet you at a networking event, and you're drier than a Rivita. I'm like, hold on, this doesn't make sense now. Or what could have been a beautiful business relationship? So someone else is doing that for you. So if we started our relationship off on a lie, where we're going to get to. It's the job of a personal brand, and it's to get under the skin of that person and make them interested in their own voice, rather than go, you need to be this and you need to be that. No, you need to be you.
Yeah, and some people won't like you. Some people don't like me. That's cool.
Yeah.
I still sleep at night. So what's been your harshest learning experience to date?
I think Yeah, the first thing of kind of like getting done over like that was quite harsh. Learning that not everyone's a nice person. But I think for me, it's like the ongoing one. It would probably be the fact that like no one's going to care as much as you. Which you can have people that will care, and whether it be a client or a team or something like that. But I like to be around people that are fully immersed in a project, for instance. And I understand it. Don't get me wrong. If it's a 9 to 5, make it your 9 to 5. But I love working and being around people that are like fully passionate and like mission led on. We're going to change this here. So yeah, it's a bit sad when you see people that just want to kind of do the minimum viable. But again, you can't judge it. Everyone's got their own reasons. But yeah, it's quite sad. But I think it's just part of my general misanthropian nature of humanity as a whole. I think we're just getting so much worse as a human race.
We'll all be dead soon anyway, so it's fine. What are you most proud of, if you had to pick just one thing?
I think it's probably going to be retiring my mum. I did that last Christmas. She was a teaching assistant for like 30 odd years or something like that. And she was always on at me like, when can I retire? You told me this thing. Because I told her when I started the business, I was like, within 5 years, you'll be retired. So annoyingly, it took like 5.5. But yeah, I got to do that in December, which was a nice present. And then got her a nice little dog, because she always said that she couldn't have a dog because she was at work. So I said, well, I fixed that problem, and now I've got your little dog. So now she's got Betty, and they go out on little walks, and she's living her best life.
Excellent. Very good. So what's next for you then? Continue grow the agency, do more work with University of Creative Idiots. Anything else?
Yeah, so I think with the agency thing, it's going to be very, very different. I think it's going to be so different with like the budgets and AI enhancements and things like that now. So our goal is going to be to scale deeper with the clients that we already have and see what other additional services and complementary services that we can do. Because I would much rather work with 20 really cool people than 100 where we're scattered around doing bits and bobs for people. The more we can, it sounds arrogant, but the more we can control that market and funnel, the better that business does. So we're going to just try and kind of embed ourselves further into that. And then the University of Creative Idiots, the goal is to massively scale that. And we're going to be putting new lessons in. We've got new guest lecturers, got new formats, we've got meetups. But ultimately, that's going to be a place where you can come if you can't afford 2, 5, 10 grand a month for an agency. You can come in and get real time advice and tips from campaigns that have happened and are happening right now, on tap advice from people who are in the trenches, have been in the trenches, guest lectures and micro lessons that will take you 10 minutes to consume, where you take away at least one actionable tip each time. And if we can't provide that value for 30 quid a month, then we're doing something very, very badly wrong. But the goal is to get that global. We've got a few requests out we've got a few inquiries about sponsorship for it as well. So I think it'll be a good year for it next year.
And it sounds like a really valuable resource for, particularly for a solo marketer working in a really small business that barely has any budget to do marketing. I think that'll be absolutely invaluable. And we'll drop a link to that as well in the description for anyone who wants to follow and check that out.
Cheers, mate.
So if you were starting out again, where would you focus your development, and what would you throw in the bin?
For me, communication. I was quite shy growing up, so I didn't do a lot of like public speaking, and I fell into writing instead, which was, a blessing, but also a curse, because when you become a business owner, you're doing a lot more speaking than you are writing, because you've got to meet people and close deals, or up until a point until COVID hit, when writing became the thing to do because you couldn't meet anyone and talk face to face. For me, I always say to people, if you're focusing on anything, focus on mastering one form of communication. If you can't write well, learn to speak. If you can't speak well, learn to write. And if you can get both nailed, amazing. Every social post you read got copy in it. Every video you've ever watched has been scripted. Every website you ever read, copy. Email, copy. Ads, copy. It's the root of absolutely everything, and that is not going to change. So if you can master that, you can make people do anything you want. So I would focus all my attentions on those and keep away from the shiny objects. It's not gonna happen overnight. Creativity is a muscle, and writing's a skill that happens with practice. No one's going to give you a hack that's going to triple your income by tomorrow just by using these 3 words in your post. It's not reality. Ask anybody that's ever had any form of successful career in marketing or copywriting.
And AI is only going to make the lazy lazier in this context, isn't it? It's not a fast track to greatness.
This is it. And I think it will wipe out the mediocre marketers, which, to a point, it is fine. It will get better at production. But ultimately, again, the great irony of this is it's only as good as the prompts you give it. And what are the prompts that you give it? It's copy, it's creative strategy, it's thinking. It's not going to be able to give you the ideas. They need to come from you. And if you're not practicing and flexing your creative muscles about how you observe things and how you write them down and how it could potentially work as a wider picture, that's just a churner out of information. And you'll see people, particularly next year, hand their entire creative and thinking process over to AI, and they will obviously cut down immediate costs on all these amazing freelance creatives and copywriters they've been using. And then over time, the search engines will fill full of duplicate content. And then the ones that have kept the human touch on it will absolutely eat up all the market share. And then they'll go, oh shit, maybe we've made a mistake. Maybe it's time to bring that human touch back. And by then you're already 9 months behind. So I think use it, but use it to a point where it doesn't take away that beautiful but painful part of the creative process, because I could write one post that takes me 3 hours to pore over and it will outperform 30 that AI churns out now in a minute. And that time is worth spending.
The clue's in the name. It's artificial intelligence. It's not just intelligence. So remember the fact that this is artificial. It's not really intelligent and thinking the way that we do. Yeah, it's a hammer. It's a hammer or a screwdriver, really.
Yeah.
To go back to plumbing.
No. Tools are only as good as the people using them, honestly. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, though, I think.
And finally, before I let you run off into the sunset, what's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
Probably stop feeling sorry for yourself. No one's coming to save you. You can spend all your time wallowing about the fact that you wasn't born into money, or you had a broken home, or this happened, or I hurt my leg so I can't do that. Actually, most success is just on the other side of 24 months of consistency, doing ruthless execution of the fundamentals for longer than anybody else. Everyone gives up after 30, 60, 90 days. And guess what? Consistency is free. Doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or a pauper, you can be consistent. Consistency is free. It's available to everybody. And hardly anybody uses it because they're lazy or they're greedy. And people don't want to admit that to themselves, but you're probably just not working hard enough.
So keep on going, keep on pushing, and you'll climb that mountain eventually. Very good. So thanks so much for joining us today. There's loads of really good stuff there to take away and think about, and a good cold shower of reality as well, which I think we all need from time to time. And thanks to everyone else for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe for future updates, leave a review, or share with your friends and colleagues. See you next time.